Hey mamas, welcome to Breastfeeding Relief with Bethany. We share incredible stories, tips, and breastfeeding ideas to help on your journey. I'm your host, Bethany Laverne, a lactation consultant and speech therapist who helps mamas with breastfeeding. Not all breastfeeding stories are the same, and we dive into those topics. Hi, Lyssah. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you, Bethany?
Awesome. Thank you. Doing good. Tell me about yourself and how many kiddos you have.
Well, I am a mom to 6 amazing kiddos, 3 earthside, 2 in heaven, and well, technically 1 on the way, so 5.5, but
well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I liked how you said half, because in America, they always say the dream is 2.5 kids. So I call my dog my 0.5 kid.
Well, I'm like, she's here internally, but I'm not actually having to remember to don't leave her in the stroller or the car yet. She's just kind of like, carry on. So
yeah,
a little different than a full one.
Yeah, it is nice when they're just carry on for a while. So why don't you tell us how some of your breastfeeding journeys went?
Well, breastfeeding was always something I wanted to do. It was always something that was very normal in my family. And then all of my first 3 kids had amazing latches. It was like the milk just came in, it was like not a big deal. In fact, my first, I ended up going back to work when he was 3 months old, and then I had to pump. And I was able to do that exclusively for the first year.
Okay.
And then right towards the end, I had to supplement just a tad, to make sure we were getting him all that he needed. But with my second, she refused a bottle. So she was 100% on the booth, all the time.
Okay.
And then my third, he would have not stopped nursing if he would probably still be nursing, and he's 3.5.
Okay.
So I was like, he'd probably go to college nursing at this point. That's his passion. But I loved it. It was always something that I very much cherished with my kids. I will say I was a little bummed they all refused a pacifier and seemed to think I was a human pacifier, but it's a small season. But my fourth was actually probably my most noteworthy breastfeeding experience, because again, once you've kind of done it, you're like, oh, I've done this, no big deal,
Yeah.
And then my fourth was a 25 weeker, and she was 1 pound 2 ounces when she was born. Oof. And she obviously born straight into the NICU. She was intubated for the first 8 months of her life, ended up with a tracheostomy. And so I went from at 23 weeks having no idea anything was wrong to 25 weeks, I have a baby, and now I have to pump. And in the NICU, especially that early breast milk is so important. Babies' systems are so underdeveloped. It just, but it's also this highly stressful situation. Right. And your body doesn't want to acknowledge, oh, I had a baby.
Sure.
So it was definitely not like the other ones. It was a challenge from the get-go.
Sure.
And it was, but it was something that I'm really glad to have experienced and have gone through, because it opened my eyes to a whole new side. When something comes easy, you kind of take it for granted. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this doesn't come easy for everyone all the time, So it was a really great experience. It was the one thing I could do for my daughter, when they're hooked up to so many monitors and vents and oxygen and all these different things. And you can't even, I wasn't able to hold her until she was 23 days old.
Oh, wow.
And so the only thing for almost the first month of her life that I could do for her was to pump. And it was, to this day, probably one of the things I'm most thankful and proud of in my life, because we were able to, I was able to pump for her whole time in the NICU.
Awesome.
So yeah. So it was definitely a different experience, because obviously when you're nursing, if you're every breastfeeding journey is different. You've got exclusively nursing, exclusively pumping, a mixture, a hybrid, all these different things. Yeah. And this was my first exclusively pumping experience. And it was just, it was mind blowing. It was lots of ups and downs.
I can only imagine. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, because I feel like as moms, we always want the best for our children. We always think it's going to be perfect. And I feel like we need to think more about like what could go wrong. Like, I'm not trying to be a negative Nelly, but it's good to hear, from other moms that, it's okay to not nurse your baby, and it's okay to exclusively pump and still give them that awesome breast milk. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I know so many insurances now pay for breast pumps. So please look up your insurance. I know I was able to call a number. I was only given $50, which is nothing in terms of a breast pump. And so we did add money to that to get a higher breast pump.
Yeah.
But do know that a lot come free, and that you can also get better pumps and just use some of the money towards that. Yeah. So that's some good advice. What is something you wish you would have known about breastfeeding?
Just kind of sticking with the same trend, sure. Looking more at my NICU experience. Mm-hmm. I would say I wish I would have known that it is like it's completely different. It's not because you're working against almost your body in that aspect, where your body's not ready to be producing and different things. And if you don't know that in the beginning, it can be so discouraging, because like I think for my first 12 weeks, I was lucky if I got 30 milliliters per pump between both parts. And a lot of lactation consultants aren't educated on when you're pumping for a baby that early. And so a lot of times they'll tell you, well, you just might not be producing, your body just might not be able to do it. And I've seen so many NICU moms, and I was almost in the same position where you think, oh, I guess can't do it. But I ended up sticking it out. And by probably like her third month, I finally got up to where I was getting, 2 to 3 ounces per pump. And awesome. It was such a relief to go, oh, okay. Like, it's not, when you're pumping early, it's not the same. And the same goes for, I've known moms who are in the NICU who are still able to nurse their babies. Obviously ours was intubated, so we weren't able to nurse her. But it's the same thing where it's like, oh, it's not coming in, something's wrong with me. And it's like, no, sometimes it just takes more time. And, not to mention, understanding how cortisol and stress impact your production ability.
So true.
I would have understood that, because again, you're so stressed out, you're so sleep deprived, you're so like, and half the time they're like, well, pump around your baby. And you're like, when I'm pumping around my baby, there's alarms going on, there's all this stuff happening. Right. And you're like trying to relax, and you're like, and it's just, you learn though, you get to this place where it's almost like when you've been even in labor, like where you have to tell your body, like, no, we have to relax. We have to fight or flight needs to go away. And I think if I had known that going into it, I think I would have had a lot less reciprocal stress, like where you're like, I'm not producing enough. And you start getting into this tailspin of like, what am I going to do? And again, when you feel like it's like the only thing you can do for your baby, and you're like, I can't even do this, like, So I think I just wish I would have known that, like that it takes time. And just because, they normally tell you it takes, what is it? Like I'm trying to think how many days. It's been so long since it's been like a normal nursing situation, but what is it? Like a week to 12 days for your milk to fully come in, kind of a thing.
Oh, like, yes. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure where we were going with that.
Sorry about that. But you know what I mean? Like you have this mindset of if it hasn't increased by then, I wish I would have known that is different.
Sure.
In that situation.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Cause I feel like when you head home from the hospital, they usually keep you for 48, 72 hours. I got discharged after 32 because I asked, everything went fine. And so I get home and I'm like, oh my gosh, my milk hasn't come in. So I start freaking out myself that it's not here. Oh, trust me. I knew when it came in. You will know. Your boobs get huge and you're like, oh, it's here. we're here today. And so again, maybe me freaking out about it and being like, honey, go make me oatmeal again.
Right.
You know, like you're trying, you know, go buy me that pink drink from Starbucks, you know? Yeah. So, you know, cause it has,
Coconut
oats.
milk and all the stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And so, pro tip, go head over to Starbucks, moms. I always say on your first day back to work, go stop at Starbucks and get a pink drink.
I like that. I will remember that.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Treat yourself on the way to work while you're crying because you just dropped off your baby. Yeah.
Right.
I also had my lactation consultant told me, you know, along with that stress, you know, partly you need to not watch it. Don't sit back and go, oh, we're up to an ounce.
Cover it.
Stop watching it. Cover it up with a blanket, you know, unless it's one of those ones you can tuck in and you can't see anyways, but cover it up with a blanket. She said, put your pods in, listen to music, listen to your favorite show, you know, something to laugh at, you know, turn on Friends, turn on The Office, turn on something that you really like. That's also, you don't have to concentrate on. And I do feel like that made a huge difference. I felt like you had a lot more milk than if you sat and watched it because you're stressing out about it.
Oh yeah. 1000%. 1000%. There's something, it's like that whole watch pot never boils. It's like a watch tube never empties.
There you go. I think that'll be my new quote. A watch tube will never empty. Yeah. Why don't you tell us what was one of your favorite breastfeeding products you used?
Oh, so I would say my favorite product, again, sticking with the NICU theme, the pump and pals, the silicone pumps.
Okay.
And getting actually fitted for flange sizes was like a game changer because again, I think that was also around the time when, you know, like I could tell I had more in, but I couldn't get it to come out. And I'm not one of those people that empties in 15 minutes.
Sure.
Like I am normally if I'm pumping, even with the good flanges, the fitted flanges, I'm pumping for at least 45 minutes. That's just my body now nursing. Oh, we're done in like 10 minutes. It's like done, you know, but like, I just don't respond as well to a pump as I do my baby. Yeah. And those silicone flanges, number one, were so much more comfortable than the hard plastic ones.
Awesome.
They're angled down. So it mimics a little bit more like if you were holding your baby and nursing rather than like just pulling it straight out and like sucking your little nipple and it, you know, hurts. So just, it felt a lot better. And they seriously, like they would, because before them, I think I was pumping for at least an hour every time. And once I had them, I was pumping between 30 to 45 minutes and getting the same amount, if not a little more. And so it was just so much more efficient. And again, just kind of helped you not to stress as much because you're not uncomfortable. And so if there's anything I can say, if you're a mom out there and you're anticipating a NICU stay or you're in the NICU and you're stressing out, they're expensive, but they are worth it. They're so worth it.
Yeah. So. And I also want to say, you know, with your pump always comes flanges, but they're just a standard size. By the way, the standard size is not the average woman. Please go get fitted. They're super easy to do. To be fitted to get your correct size. Because if you aren't on your correct size, you are not going to have as much milk. So definitely make sure you do that pro tip right there. So,
and there's even, there's a Facebook group. I forget the name of it, but their moderators are trained and were even able to do that because we were in the middle of COVID.
Oh, sure.
And so, you know, I mean, like when I realized it was like, if I didn't talk to a lactation consultant was at the NICU, I was kind of like up a creek. And so then I was like, oh, these people can help me. And they were so gracious and so kind and
awesome.
They were great.
Yeah. Awesome. Is there any last breastfeeding advice you would like to offer?
Give yourself grace. I think as moms, we take a lot of pressure on ourselves.
Yes.
And then that pressure turns to becomes a burden. And then that burden makes it hard for us to actually walk out what it is we need to do. And so if there's anything I've learned through breastfeeding for babies, it is that you are doing your best. Doesn't matter what the outcome is. The fact that you are walking that journey out you are doing your best. And guess what? If there comes a point where you have to supplement, it is not the end of the world.
Amen.
Some breast milk is better than no breast milk, and it's okay. It is okay.
Yes.
So give yourself that grace and don't add the extra stress, because the extra stress will just weigh you down. And I think other than that, enjoy it. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I know the middle of the night pumps are like, or nursing is like frustrating once baby's getting old and they're like biting and they're doing all those things. It can be like, oh my gosh, but there is something so special about that time that you're not going to get back. My oldest now, he's 7, and it's like, I look at him and I'm like, did I ever really like nurse you? Like, but that time that we used to I used to do a lot of side laying because I'm fairly well endowed.
Okay.
Suffocate my baby. Sorry, it's like an overshare, but like when I'm nursing, I'm like a J. Like it's not a joke. And so I did a lot of side laying to nurse him, and it was just such a sweet time with him. And it was such a like I've so cherished that time with my children.
Right.
And even with my last little girl, she had a G tube, and but knowing that there was that nourishment. And that was part of me, like being given to them, just like soak it up. It is such a precious time. And it is, you're a hero. You're a superhero.
Yeah.
That's all. Like that. I have so much respect for just moms in general, but for people who that's their goal, like you got it, you're killing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your advice and all your pro tips. Can you tell mamas how they can connect with you?
Probably the best place to connect with me is on YouTube. I have a channel, Mama Wears Many Hats. We talk all things motherhood, even the hard and crappy stuff. And I think I have some jokes on there about our breastfeeding journeys a little bit, but I'd love to see you, love to chat with you. It'd be great.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much too, Bethany. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening in. If you loved this episode, it would mean so much if you would share it with another mama or post on social media and tag me. I want to personally thank you for wanting to help other mamas. You got this. I'm rooting for your breastfeeding journey.